Does Metallica's Load have a great album hidden inside the not-so-great album that it is? Is its brilliance hidden by the fact that it's literally as long as you could make an album and still fit it on a compact disc, which super mattered in 1996? Am I going to keep asking rhetorical questions? Hi, I'm Michael. I'm not a qualified expert on music at all, but I do have opinions and a microphone, so here we are. This is Eclecticism. Metallica was huge in the 80s. If you're here, you probably know that. They were the biggest metal band at the time. They aided in the transition between more traditional heavy metal bands like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden into the more extreme metal genres that came later in the 80s and then in the 90s. But then, tragedy hit the band. They lost their bassist. On their fourth album, because of this, they had no bass. Their fifth album was kind of mellow, for them anyway, and then in 1996 they made Load. To many fans of the past, this was where they really lost their mojo. To some fans, they never seemed to get it back after this. In this video, we're going to look at this controversial album, analyze why so many found it to be a miss, and then I'm going to take some whittling tools to the thing and see if I can edit and resequence the track listing to make something that's a more sharply honed statement of an album. Or maybe I'll just make a disgusting bloody mess, like the cover. Speaking of the cover, let's talk about some of the more superficial reasons that people might have been biased against this album. The cover, for one. Instead of something cool and metal like you had on their first few, or even a reference to Spinal Tap, they stuck some blood and cum between glass slides and took a picture. The usual Metallica logo that was so memorable was replaced by this, which on the scale of metal logos is very bland. It might not even be a logo, it might just be a font. They cut their hair, they wore eyeliner, which was really not cool in the homophobic 90s, and the videos weren't great. So the visual look was different here, more of a departure than for the Black Album, but how about the music? A cynical person might say Metallica looked around at who was selling records in the metal genre, saw Pantera, Soundgarden, maybe Stone Temple Pilots, and they said, let's do that. A lot of people were making this accusation at the time. Metallica were called huge sellouts by some, which was, in the 90s, the worst thing you could be as a rock band. And this was something that got lobbed at you if you changed your sound in any way that fans didn't like, because you could always be called a sellout for changing what you were doing too much. But maybe, just maybe, Metallica looked around at how music had evolved in the 90s since thrash became a big thing and changed metal, and they were inspired to try some new things. Because not all the style shifts on Load actually line up with what was popular. They literally have a country ballad on here. Are we trying to say Metallica thought that a country ballad was how they were going to start bringing in the big bucks? Load feels to me like a band in transition. They're exploring a more groove sound that sometimes leans a little metal, sometimes leans more hard rock, and it often leans a bit country too in a variety of ways I find interesting, from the slide guitar on some songs to the twang on Until It Sleeps, and even some minor touches like how James Hetfield pronounces some words. And with all that, you still have occasional thrashing like on Ain't My Bitch and Wasting My Hate. So if you hear all of this and it sounds like a lot is going on, that's because there's a lot going on. There's probably too much going on, in fact. And maybe there's just too much in general, because as I mentioned at the beginning, this album almost maxes out the possible length for a CD. Metallica had yet to learn the lesson that sometimes less is more. A lesson I'm sure they've picked up at some point over the decades. Charting out the way this album flows, we start off with pretty much the most thrash track. Then, we have an upbeat rocker with a nice groove. Both of these are long songs, because all of the songs on this album are long. So even though they're upbeat, it feels kind of like not a lot's happening. Then the third track, The House That Jack Built, moves into what feels more like Soundgarden territory to me, with a song that's slower than the first two. Then on track 4, we hit what I think of as the singles clump. Until It Sleeps, King of Nothing, and Hero of the Day. These all had videos, they were all relatively popular and played on MTV at the time. These pick up the pace and the memorability of the album quite a bit. Then we hit Bleeding Me, another really good song, very dark, good lyrics, very long. And then we hit a clump of the weakest tracks on the album. Because the songs are so long, we've already been listening for about 40 minutes when we get to this point, and now we're listening to weak songs for another 14 minutes. Then, at the 54-minute mark, we reach a full-on country ballad, and once that's over, we have two more decent mid-paced tracks. Then the thing closes out with a 10-minute slow-paced song that feels a bit like doom metal and is actually pretty great. But overall, does this sound exhausting? Yes, and it is. I listened to this album a lot growing up, but the only time I listened to the whole thing front to back is if I was on a long drive. Otherwise, I'd probably listen to the first half and turn it off after Bleeding Me, or I'd just listen to the second half to try and remember what those songs were. Why couldn't the songs be shorter? Why couldn't they have cut a few of the weaker ones? It does seem like Metallica have a bit of an issue with self-editing. But fortunately, I don't have a problem with editing the shit out of somebody else's art. So let's see what we can do with this track list. It's a little bit lighter of a load. First off, we're not going to start with a thrash track at all. Ain't My Bitch is not that great on a scale of Metallica thrashing anyway, and it sets up an expectation the album is definitely not going to meet. So it's not even going on this mix. We're starting with King Nothing. This is a solid hard rock song with memorable riffs and a good chorus. It's also going to be one of the singles. It's going to get heads bobbing, maybe even lightly banging. For track 2, we're moving to The House That Jack Built. This song is another with a more grungy feel, so we're resetting expectations more for what Metallica sounds like in 1996. We started kind of hard rock, we're doing some grunge now, we're showing that Metallica is going to do whatever they want, because they're fucking Metallica. But importantly, these are both really strong tracks. Maybe not everybody's going to love this new direction, but starting off this way is making a statement about where the band is, and it's also going to say, Metallica can write a song. Then we get to track 3, and let's just demolish expectations. Mama Said. Yes, we're putting the country song front and center. Why? First off, it is a great song, and we're showing it off here. We're not going to hide it until after you've been listening to guitar noodling for an hour. If you heard this resequencing for the first time back in 1996, you'd have no idea what Metallica could do next. Your mind would be blown. Then track 4 is Bleeding Me. This song, like I said, it's kind of slower, it's kind of sinister. The slow pacing works really well here because we're building up again after Mama Said, and the song kind of carries through the country vibes of the last song, through the extensive slide guitar playing. And by the way, Bleeding Me has this wonderful build-up, and it's one of the long songs on Load that really earns the length, even though it is the second longest song on the album. Then we're going to get to track 5, which is Until It Sleeps. This is, for me, one of the high points of the album. It's a song about the ongoing fight against one's demons. The idea of needing to be held until the demons you battle with finally go silent. That's such a powerful idea for me, and this feels like a good time to talk about the narrative of the album. Not the narrative of Load as it actually exists, because that has no narrative, but the narrative that I'm trying to put together with this new sequencing. We started with a song that depicts a king who had it all, but it all crashed down and it's fallen apart. The next track, The House That Jack Built, carries through with a similar darkness, with the character struggling to tell the difference between safety and danger, surrounded by potential demons, not knowing where to take shelter and where to hide. Then you have the line, "Let the show begin," repeated, and this could lead us to thinking that maybe this character is actually the band, trying to carry on, trying to take the stage, while surrounded by all of this darkness. Knowing what we do about the band in this period, maybe there's something to this reading. But even if it's not about the band, it does continue this narrative from the first track. Then Mama Said is looking back on the past, on a mother who has passed on, with the recognition that they never knew the love they received until it was too late. They left to escape the clutches of their mother, but now they want to return, they want to experience that love, but a cold stone is all they see. They're at the gravestone, Mama dead. The darkness keeps growing in track 4 with Bleeding Me. We see the character seemingly closer to a sense of hopelessness on Until It Sleeps. And so throughout these tracks, we're keeping up this theme of reaching a great height, finding that the place there is hollow, battling against your demons, and reaching out to loved ones who might be able to make these demons sleep, even if it's just a temporary break from them. Then track 6 on this version is going to be Thorn Within. Musically, this feels a bit inspired by Alice in Chains to me, and it's another solid track that carries through the narrative I'm trying to build here. Here's where the character fully realizes the darkness they fight has been internal the whole time. Then track 7 is Hero of the Day, which is the second song that leans heavily into the country vibes. This is seriously a high point in their songwriting for me, and I'm not just talking about Load, I mean across all the albums. I love this song. And after the heavy darkness of the last couple, it shifts the pace, while also giving us one of the most catchy and memorable songs on the album. But this time, the country song morphs into a metal bridge and this metal outro, blending the country with some of the fastest drumming and riffing on the album. Going back to the narrative, it feels like we're seeing the heroes, or maybe they're anti-heroes, from the outside. There's a light burning back at home, but they're out in the world. Even at moments of near peace in a rocking chair, they're suffering in despair. They're racked by nightmares. There are references to the Keepers of the Flame hearing the cries of their babies. And from the context, it sounds like maybe the babies are those who are out in the world, needing nurturing, but really with nowhere to turn where they are now. Then we have a repeated line of "Mama, they try and break me," a line that connects back to the loss of the mother. And in this reordering of the album, this is actually a callback to a song we've heard speaking to a mother. And I feel like it makes the song much more powerful being placed here. So that's track 7, which I think of as sort of the climax of this version of the album, and a drawing together of the narrative. Then we're going to end with track 8, The Outlaw Torn. Yes, we're going to end at track 8. Did you catch the part where I said these songs are long as hell? This 8-track version of the album will still clock in at 50-ish minutes, which to me is still slightly longer than the perfect album length of 45 minutes. 45 minutes is perfect. It's long enough for it to be an experience, but it's not long enough to be an ordeal. And we'll go over what got cut and why in a moment. Anyway, track 8, The Outlaw Torn. This is a long and epic closer, and honestly, it does make me think of doom metal a little bit, making it one of the more metallic songs on this album, more metal. It has a slow, plodding pace, but that builds up into a chug and takes off into some solos and has some good riffing, different passages. And on the actual album, do you know what they did? They cut this track off early because they ran out of space. That's right. In order to make room for 14 songs that are almost all over the 5-minute mark, they cut off part of one of the best tracks on the album. You can hear the complete version over on YouTube. So we close with an epic closer, and we have a concise-ish sort of album with a clear narrative focus on basically being a band that's struggling hard with its demons. There are no forgettable tracks on this version, there are no songs with throwaway lyrics that don't feel sincere, and while the songs fit together both musically and narratively, you never have tracks that sound too similar following one another. So what did I end up cutting? I cut the songs that fell into a couple categories. 1, the songs that just felt like watered down thrash to me. These don't come off as that strong to me anyway. It feels kind of like the band knew they were supposed to do some thrash, so they put some on there. It doesn't feel like they're committing that hard to it though. With this version, I kind of want them to just say fuck fan expectations. We're going to do what we want to do now. And then I cut a bunch of the songs that felt sort of mid-tempo, slow, and didn't have that interesting of lyrics. Poor Twisted Me, for example, fits the narrative, but the lyrics aren't as strong as what we did keep on here, and the song also isn't quite as memorable anyway. We just didn't need it, and I run a tight ship here. If you're curious to hear this version of Load, you can find it on Apple Music, where I've shared it. Or, since it's 8 songs coming from one album, you could also just make your own mix of it pretty quickly, and let me know what you think. Overall, I think Load is an underrated album that got too much hate for going against what fans were expecting and hoping for. But I'll also admit that it is a bit bloated, unfocused, and maybe doesn't commit as hard as it could have to doing any one thing really well. But now, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think of Load? Is it the best? The worst? Should it be filed in the metal section at all? Which members of Metallica would you most like to see on the next season of Survivor? Any comments make me happy. You probably know how YouTube works, but there's a button down there, it says subscribe. If you click it, you'll get to see any upcoming videos I make on music-related topics. They probably will not have anything to do with Metallica, and they most definitely won't have to do with Load. If you click the bell, that makes me very happy. Have yourself a lovely day.